Can you think of the last time that you were hungry? And I'm talking like really hungry, like tummy growling, gut-wrenching kind of hunger. Actually, maybe you guys noticed this kind of hunger during lockdown when all the McDonald's were shut and you were just craving a Big Mac, or in my case, a McChicken sandwich. When I was younger, I ended up getting appendicitis and I had to be taken to the hospital to be operated on. And where I was at the time, it was this tiny little hospital in the middle of nowhere in this seaside town. And so they didn't know how long it would take for me to be operated on. They didn't know when they could take me in. And in that time they told me, you know, we don't know when you're going to go. You could be told at any minute. So you can't eat anything before your operation. You can't drink anything. And in fact, if I wanted to have a glass of water, I had to have this little sponge, dip it in a glass of water and then place it on my tongue. And that was it. That was all I was allowed. And so this went on for 3 whole days before they were able to take me in. And I kid you not, they were the longest 3 days of my life. I was the definition of hangry. Maybe you've experienced that kind of hunger too, maybe from a day of fasting, or maybe you've been sick like me, and so you know that ache, that gnawing tightness in your stomach because you are just so hungry. In the Gospel of Matthew, we hear of a crowd that haven't eaten all day, and you know, they're all gathered around Christ listening to him teach. And his disciples actually try and get Christ to send the crowds away because they're beginning to get hungry and they just don't have enough to feed this massive crowd. But Jesus teaches them a really important lesson, that the Son of Man came to give and to not count the cost. And so his followers must do the same. And so Christ actually tells them to feed them yourselves. Imagine the look on the disciples' faces when Christ tells them this. The crowd was made up of 5,000 men with women and children, and they barely had enough food to feed themselves, let alone such a huge crowd. But the little that they had, they placed in the hands of the Lord, and it became more than enough. And now maths is definitely not my forte, but I do know that 5 loaves and 2 fish definitely does not equate to 12 baskets of leftovers. But Jesus multiplies each and every one of our little offerings. Something really cool about this passage is that the language that's used to describe the bread and fish is the same language used at the Last Supper. You know, he takes the loaves and fish, he blesses it, he breaks the bread, and then he gives thanks before feeding the 5,000. And you might recognize this language. This moment is a foreshadowing of the Eucharistic celebration that we get to take place in every Sunday at Mass. Jesus desires to feed those that are hungry. And just like he invited the apostles to work with him and help him in this passage, today he invites us to. He wants to use us to be his hands and feet. And if each of his followers gave what little they have, Christ would multiply that just like he did with the loaves and fishes. We need food to survive, and Christ gave himself to us in the Eucharist, the great gift of himself in the bread of life, because we need him. And Jesus points out that any other food, no matter how much we eat, will not save our souls, because our souls need the Eucharist in order to survive. Sometimes we might find ourselves starving spiritually, and we can go hungry for so long that we might end up starving ourselves without even really realizing it. My question to you is this: are you hungry? And if the answer is yes, then for a moment just stop what you're doing and ask Christ to help you to give and not count the cost like he did, and to actually give him your own fish and loaves, whatever that might be, so that he can transform them and use them to build up his kingdom here on earth, so that we can go out and feed those who are hungering just like us. And always trust in his promise when Christ says that I am the bread of life, and he who comes to me shall not hunger, and he who believes in me shall never thirst.